But here's the thing. Christ is not intimidated by temptation. He hears this stuff and he is not on his heels. He is on his toes. He is ready to take this on. And so what method does he choose to resolve this case? He turns a deaf ear. He turns a deaf ear. You know, sometimes it is not my gift to think things through sometimes. I will just like, oh, I'm mad. I got boom, boom, boom on Facebook or like, Ella, get in here, you're in trouble, da, 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 da. I need to take this advice that I'm preaching. I need to put a mirror right here so that I'm looking at myself. Because I have such trouble with this. What basically he's doing here is it says in verse 6, he bends down and starts to write on the ground. He was turning a deaf ear. Christ, by this, teaches us to be slow to speak when difficult cases are proposed to us. To don't quickly shoot our mouth off. To pause and consider before we reply. To think twice before we speak once. I got it that time, didn't I? I messed up the first service. Think twice before we speak once. And he starts to write on the ground. Now, we don't know what he wrote on the ground. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but because this is the only mention of this story in all of the Gospels. But then they press him for this answer, and he turns the conviction of the prisoner onto the prosecutor. So let's look at verse 7 and 8. It says, when they kept on questioning him, why'd they keep on questioning him? Maybe they were starting to panic a little bit. Maybe they were starting to say, maybe we're in trouble. Maybe we did this to this guy, and he actually is who he says he is. They kept on questioning him, and he straightens up and he says to them, you've heard the words, if any one of you is without sin, let him be the first to throw a stone at her. And he stooped down and wrote on the ground. So they ask him these questions, and he immediately stoops down onto the ground and starts writing something. And they don't like that. Who likes to be ignored? Nobody likes to be ignored, especially the Pharisees of the temple. And so they keep on questioning him. Maybe he seems like they're not taking notice of them, and that's what makes them more vigorous. I don't know. But at last he puts them all to shame in silence with one sentence, and that is, if any one of you is without sin, let him be the first to throw a stone at her. So Christ, I love it. I love my Jesus. Christ avoids the snare which they had laid for them and effectively saves his own reputation. He doesn't neither reflect upon the law or upon the person's guilt, nor did on the other hand encourage the prosecution. See how good it is when we take things into consideration? You know, we can't, if you have a destination and you can't get there by just steering straight forward and going, then you better take out a compass and go around the obstacles. If you're in a position where you're forced to make a decision on the spot and you know you can't do that directly, you better start seeking a way to get to where you need to go. Because you can't go straight through. And then the second thing is they came with this design to accuse him, but really in the end, they were forced to accuse themselves. It's incredible. That's my Jesus. It's awesome. And see, the question was not whether the prisoner should be prosecuted. That was not the question. The question was whether or not by their own consciousness that the Pharisees were fit to be the accusers. Were they fit to be the prosecutors? And having given him the startling word, he left them to consider it. Because it says in verse 8, he again stooped down and wrote on the ground. I've done this with my daughter before. I won't tell you which one. But my daughter, when she is forced to make a decision about something, my wife and I will give her some options. You know, it's like, well, you know that you can't go outside and play until your room is clean. And mommy is here right now and she'll help you clean it. But Dad, I really want to go out and play with my friends because they're all outside playing right now. And I was like, okay, well, here's your option. You can either clean your room now with your mom helping you, or you can go outside and play and then come home and do it yourself. Start writing on the ground. Go ahead, consider that. And my daughter will sit there and think, just like the Pharisees were like, that's an interesting scenario. Okay, now I want you to think about what your decisions are. And it kind of puts it back on her. I don't be the bad guy so much anymore, right? And that is always a goal. I took my compass out. We figure out another way around to get to her, to cleaning her room. Number 3, last one. Okay, so we should not be intimidated by relapse. So the scribes and the Pharisees, they were so awestruck by the words of Christ that they let their persecution of Christ subside. They let their attempt to tempt him leave. They ceased to prosecute the woman. And verse 9, 10, 11, look what it says. Actually, we'll do 9 and 10. It says, and at this, those who heard began to go away one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left with the woman who was standing there. Jesus straightened up and asked her, woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? This is so awesome. I love my Jesus. I mean, like I said, we don't know what he wrote on the ground. Some theologians suggest that he wrote the names of all the accusers that were around him to kind of show his authority, that he truly was God, and that kind of maybe startled them a little bit. Some theologians think that maybe he started writing a list of sins down, or maybe even putting their names with a sin and be like, hey, I know that you, Jacob, is dealing with this, and you, Benjamin, is dealing with this, and kind of maybe scare them this way. I even liked one theologian suggested that he wrote down the passage Jeremiah 17:13, which all these good little all these good little Jewish boys that grew up becoming Pharisees would know. And it says, O Lord, the hope of Israel, all who forsake you will be put to shame. Those who turn away from you will be written in the dust, because they have forsaken the Lord, the spring of the living water. And incidentally, he refers to himself as the living water just a few chapters before. Now, that's all speculation. Do not leave here today saying, oh, I know what he wrote on the ground because Tony told me. I have no idea. Those are just some ideas. But the point is that whatever he wrote on the ground impacted them so much that they left. And not only did they leave, it's interesting that the eldest ones left first. Maybe they had really been convicted. They knew how they were living. And also they knew that as the elders that they should no longer go. They knew the dangers of continuing this conversation. And so they left. Eldest ones first, youngest ones later. I told first service, that's one of the questions I'm going to ask when I get there. I can't wait to find out what it is he wrote on the ground. Like, dude, tell me, what was it? He's like, oh, it was a smiley face, man. I don't know what he's doing. But anyway. So whether they were frightened like Belshazzar was in the book of Daniel when the writing came on the wall, or maybe they were just frightened by their own conscience knowing what Jesus knew, because whatever it was, he molested their conscience with what he wrote. And that's the most important thing for you to understand. And we're left with just Jesus and the woman. There's a story about a minister who parked his car in a no parking zone in a large city, and he attached the following message to his windshield. The note said, I have circled this block 10 times. I have an appointment to keep. Forgive us our trespass. And when he returned to his car, he found another note and a ticket. And this note says, I've circled this block for 10 years. If I don't give you a ticket, I lose my job. Lead us not into temptation. Listen, no matter whether you're a minister or you're a really holy person or you're unholy, comes a time when you need to humble yourself and hear from God. Consider yourself to be humble in your walk. And so here we are. We're at the conclusion of our trial. And this is where things really, really, really start to speak to us. You know, maybe this whole time you're like, Tony, I don't understand. What's this all about Jesus? But now this is for you and for me. All right? So it says again, verse 10, woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? I love this. This verse right here proves to me that Jesus has a sense of humor. I don't know if you've missed it. I mean, can you see Jesus here writing on the ground? writing. He finishes writing. He's like, okay, so where'd they go? Are we supposed to believe that? You think Jesus was oblivious to the fact that people started leaving? But he asks the woman, where are they? Doesn't he? He asks her, where are they? That question is not for him, it was for her. Did you take notice, woman, lady, whatever your name is? Did you take notice that they're gone? Where are they? Has no one condemned you? And the woman stood there trembling, maybe even in doubt. Because don't forget, what did he just say? If any of you is without sin, you can throw the first stone at her. For who was left? The one without sin. Jesus. I don't know, maybe she thought that this is still coming. This is the guy. If anybody's going to execute me, this is going to be him. He is without sin. I don't know. She said 3 beautiful words, no one, Lord. King James Version says Lord. If you have the NIV or the Pew Bible, the Greek word for Lord, some of you guys, it says sir. And I was kind of reading in the Greek. In the Greek, the word is kyrios, which means the supernatural master of all. Which you can't, it also does mean sir. But in this context here, it's definitely coming at you as this is the Lord. And she recognizes that. She recognized that, and she calls him Lord. But, she says, no one, Lord. And, she's pretty quiet when it comes to her accusers. She's probably humble over there, and Jesus is like, where are they? And she's like, they're gone, dude. Yeah, Jesus. Yeah, in your face. She's not yelling at them, like putting them down, not criticizing them. Just try to go back to your hole where you can, she's not doing that. She's very meek and mild and humble. You know why? Because she has just been forgiven of her sins. And do you know what? We also need to forgive our accusers. If we're hoped to be forgiven by a judge, we must forgive our accusers, no strings attached. There's a sign in a convenience store that read, check cashing policy. To err is human. To forgive, $20. Now, people, God's forgiveness is free. 100% free, complete, motivated only by his love. See, restitution or paying back a wrong, that's not a true form of forgiveness. So the prisoner is therefore discharged with probably the most beautiful words in this whole passage. Look at it with me. Verse 11. Then neither do I condemn you. Jesus declared, go now and leave your life of sin. I love my Jesus. Consider this. Here is this woman who, according to the law, deserves death. She is a failure. She is a disappointment. She is a letdown. She is a catastrophe. She is wrong. She is an insult. She is guilty. She is a criminal. She is an offender. She is a lawbreaker. She is an outlaw. She is a sinner. And she is no different than I am. No different. And she is no different than you are. The problem is that unlike this woman, my fear is that some of you will not have Jesus to be an intercessor for you. I mean, there's going to come a day, the Bible tells us, that we're going to go toe-to-toe with our Maker. Wouldn't it be so much more satisfactory knowing that you have Jesus there speaking on your behalf? I don't know about you, but I will probably be humbly in the background, trembling, cowering when I meet my Maker. You know why? Because I'm a failure. I am a disappointment. I am a letdown. I'm a catastrophe. I am wrong. I am an insult. I am guilty. I am a criminal. I am an offender. I am a lawbreaker. I am an outlaw. I am a sinner. And I need Jesus to save me. My prayer is that if you don't have Jesus as an intercessor for you, you haven't said, I'm going to put down my arms and raise my white flag and surrender to Christ. My prayer is that you don't leave this place without doing so today. Because you will continue to remain hopeless and in brokenness without Jesus. So as we're leaving, I want you to think about this. It is okay to relapse. It is okay. But guys, it is not okay to relapse. I can't let you leave without hearing from Paul in Romans 6, 1-4. It says, what shall we say then? Should we go on sinning so that grace may increase? By no means. We died to sin. How can we live in it any longer? Or don't you know that all of us who were baptized into Christ Jesus were baptized into his death? We were therefore buried with him through baptism into death, in order that just as Christ, we were raised from the dead through the glory of the Father, that we too may live a new life. I love my Jesus. I want to read one final story to you. It's about a farmer, and he had experienced several bad years when he went to go see the loan officer from his bank. And he says to me, he says, listen, I got some good news and I got some bad news. And he replied, or then he said, which one do you want to hear first, to the loan officer? And so he says, well, let's get the bad news over with. He says, well, with the drought and the inflation, I won't be able to pay a dime on my mortgage this year. He's like, oh, wow, that is pretty bad, the banker grumbled. But wait, there's more. I also won't be able to pay anything on the loan for all that machinery I bought. Whoa, things really are bad, said the banker. Oh, it gets worse. You remember how I also borrowed to buy that seed and the fertilizer? Well, I can't pay that back either. And the banker says, that is awful. Well, tell me the good news. And the farmer said, well, the good news is that I intend to keep doing business with you as my bank. The good news of the gospel is that in spite of our sinful state, God keeps doing business with us. Despite the fact that we're failures, and we relapse again, and we let him down, and we let people down, God continues to offer us the salvation through his Son, Jesus Christ. So why did Jesus respond to this woman with such compassion and forgiveness? Well, Jesus knew that people who were trapped in the worst of sins were not hopeless. They could be redeemed. And Jesus knows that no matter how many times we relapse, there is hope that we can overcome. Lay down your weapons, raise the white flag, and surrender all to him, because his grace is sufficient for us all. Amen?